July 14th, 2025. A night the Sinaloa Cartel will never forget. They came armed with arrogance. 60 gunmen packed into armored trucks. Millions in cash and drugs hidden in crates. Convinced the US border was theirs to breach. But they were wrong. Because America was waiting. For days, Navy SEALs scouted the desert. For hours, Air Force crews calibrated every weapon system. From the shadows of the cliffs to the stars above, the trap was sealed. This battle would not just crush a convoy. It would send a message that no matter how bold, no matter how armed, anyone who crosses America's red line will face firepower they cannot withstand. And when the sun rose over Arizona, the myth of cartel invincibility would be nothing but smoke. July 14th, 2025, Southern Arizona. The night was dry and unforgiving. Heat from the day still lingered on the sand, radiating upward like an invisible furnace. In the distance, the ground began to vibrate. The guttural roar of diesel engines echoed through the canyon walls, announcing the arrival of one of the most feared convoys in the Western Hemisphere. 17 vehicles in total, 14 armored pickups, and 3 heavy-duty trucks, rolled like predators across the desert floor. Mounted on their roofs, .50 caliber machine guns swiveled, their barrels gleaming under the moonlight. 60 men inside, armed with AK-47s, RPGs, and handguns, spoke into radios with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. To them, this was just another delivery. Drugs, weapons, and cash, their empire's lifeblood heading toward the US border. In the crates of those trucks lay enough poison to devastate millions of American lives. 2.4 tons of methamphetamine, half a ton of fentanyl, and over $50 million in cash. This was not merely smuggling. It was an act of war, a cartel's declaration that America's defenses could be mocked, that their network reached too far to be touched. But arrogance is a dangerous weakness. Because while the convoy believed the trail was clear, while their radios buzzed with false assurances from paid-off plaza bosses, they were already walking into a trap. A trap crafted by patience, by precision, and by men who had sworn an oath to protect every inch of their nation's soil. High above, far out of sight, an MQ-9 Reaper drone tracked every headlight, every brake flash, every heat signature. And in the dark canyons ahead, Navy SEALs lay waiting, silent as stone, their rifles aimed and their breathing steady. The convoy thought the border was wide open. What they didn't know was that America had already drawn the line.
For 3 days before the convoy rolled, the desert was alive with eyes that no man could see. At Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, a command center glowed with maps, drone feeds, and intercepted radio chatter. Every move the Sinaloa trucks made in Mexico was tracked. Every shift in speed, every change in formation was logged. It began with satellites. From orbit, they traced the convoy leaving Hermosillo, crossing Sonora, and veering north toward Arizona. At 8,000 meters, an MQ-9 Reaper circled unseen, its infrared sensors painting a perfect picture of the steel snake moving below. At lower altitudes, RQ-20 Puma drones buzzed like insects, invisible against the desert sky. Each engine rev, each burst of radio static was captured, tagged, and relayed to the command center. But above all, the canyon itself had been turned into a weapon. 7 days earlier, Navy SEAL reconnaissance teams slipped into the rugged cliffs, moving under cover of darkness. They crawled through jagged rocks, marked firing lanes with infrared paint, and buried M18A1 Claymore mines just below the sand, their trigger wires hidden under stones and brush. Tiny seismic sensors were planted along the trail, capable of detecting the weight of a single truck tire. Electronic warfare teams hid jammers in natural alcoves, devices designed to scramble GPS signals and drown out cartel radios. From the moment the convoy entered the canyon, their communication lifeline would be severed. The AC-130 Ghostrider, a flying fortress, was already circling silently miles away, its 30mm and 105mm cannons calibrated, its targeting systems locked onto the terrain. It carried flares, precision rounds, and enough firepower to tear the convoy apart in seconds if the order came. The mission orders were clear: capture or eliminate everything, let nothing cross the border. And so while the cartel boasted into their radios, believing their path had been cleared, they were in fact marching straight into a box whose walls had already closed around them. The desert night was still. Only the whisper of wind through yucca plants broke the silence. Along the ridges of a narrow canyon 8 kilometers from the border, 16 Navy SEALs lay prone, motionless, their bodies pressed into the rock as if they were part of the terrain itself. Infrared scopes swept slowly across the desert floor. Through the green glow of their optics, every cactus, every boulder, every shifting shadow was studied and memorized. Fingers rested on suppressed triggers. Bipods were steady in the sand. No one spoke. Communication was reduced to the faintest clicks and encrypted earpieces, a language of silence that spoke louder than words. Below, the canyon waited like a steel trap. Its walls rose 40 meters high, sheer cliffs of rock flanking a narrow 600-meter stretch of dirt road. Wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass, but too tight for a convoy of this size to maneuver. Once inside, the cartel would be blind to escape, boxed in by nature itself. The perfect kill zone. Far overhead, the MQ-9 Reaper adjusted its orbit, its sensors marking every glowing heat signature of engines pushing north. The seismic sensors buried in the sand began to tremble faintly, relaying signals to the command center. The convoy was near. In Tucson, officers leaned closer to their glowing screens. Each red dot creeping toward the canyon was another cartel truck. Each vibration detected meant the Steel Serpent was closer to striking range.
But on the canyon ridges, the SEALs did not shift, did not speak. They had been waiting for hours, bodies stiff, eyes unblinking, because they knew the power of patience. They knew the difference between striking too early and striking at the perfect moment. The order in their ears was calm, steady, absolute. Hold fire. Let them get deeper. At 1:14 a.m., the first truck entered the canyon. Its headlights splashed against the rock walls, throwing warped shadows across the dirt. Then came the second, the third. The Steel Serpent slithered forward, its machine guns swiveling left and right, oblivious to the fact that every gunner was already in someone's crosshairs. In the command center, a red dot blinked on the digital map. Then another. One by one, the convoy markers appeared, moving steadily into the box. On the canyon ridges, SEALs tracked them through scopes, adjusting breathing, aligning sights. Fingers tightened. The world seemed to hold its breath. The 8th vehicle reached the center of the kill zone. A faint click in an earpiece gave the signal. On the ridge above, a SEAL pressed the trigger to a detonator. The night exploded. Buried Claymore mines erupted in violent thunder, spewing thousands of steel balls into the 3 lead pickups. Windshields shattered, tires shredded. 2 gunners were flung from their turrets like rag dolls. The canyon roared with echoes, a thunderclap rolling through stone. And before the shockwaves even faded, the sky lit up. From above, the AC-130 Ghostrider unleashed its fury. Tracer rounds from its 30mm Bushmaster cannon screamed downward, carving through armored cabins, tearing steel into molten fragments. Fire blossomed from the convoy as engines burst, headlights died, and chaos consumed the line of vehicles. Cartel gunmen scrambled, leaping from truck beds, dragging rifles into the dust. Shouts in Spanish cut through the gunfire, orders, panic, desperation. But from the cliffs above, tiny muzzle flashes answered. SEAL rifles cracked with icy precision, each shot placed, each target neutralized before they could return fire. From the rear of the convoy, one pickup tried to reverse, its driver slamming gears in panic. But as it turned, a Claymore blast shredded its front tires, collapsing the chassis. The road was sealed. The Serpent was trapped. The canyon was fire and thunder. Burning wrecks clogged the road, black smoke rising in pillars that glowed orange under the Ghostrider's tracer fire. Screams and shouted commands mixed with the deafening crack of explosions. Yet in the chaos, the cartel tried to fight back. From the middle of the convoy, 2 men scrambled onto the roof of an armored truck, shoving belts into a heavy machine gun. The barrel swung upward toward the ridges. A split second later, a sniper-suppressed shot cut through the night. The gunner dropped instantly, tumbling into the dirt. His partner lunged for the weapon, only to be met with a second shot. Silence fell over the turret. On the far side, a group of cartel fighters dragged an RPG-7 from the back of a truck. Their voices rose in panic, barking orders as one knelt to steady the launcher. But in the same instant, a burst from an MP7 snapped through the air. The round struck the man's shoulder, sending the launcher spinning from his grip. It hit the dirt, detonated, and consumed 2 of his comrades in fire. The cartel pressed harder. From truck beds, bursts of AK-47 fire sprayed upward at the cliffs. Bullets ricocheted off stone, harmless against SEAL positions. A few gunmen tried to charge toward the rocks, firing wildly. But the canyon was unforgiving. Each flash of their muzzle was answered with precision. One shot, one collapse into the sand. At the rear, one heavy-duty truck lurched forward, trying to push Rex out of the way to clear an escape. The MQ-9 Reaper locked on. A Hellfire missile streaked from the sky, a white-hot lance that pierced the truck's roof. The explosion ripped through its cargo, igniting crates of ammunition. Fireballs rolled upward, shockwaves rattling the cliffs, debris raining down on the convoy. For a moment, the canyon was chaos incarnate. Fire, smoke, metal, blood. Yet above the din, the U.S. commander's voice was steady over encrypted comms. Hold your ground, no one leaves the kill zone. The cartel had walked into the tiger's den. Now they were clawing at the walls, only to find steel and fire waiting at every turn.
By 1:19 a.m., just 5 minutes after the first Claymore blast, the canyon floor was littered with fire and broken steel. Yet not all cartel fighters were finished. A cluster of men ducked behind the burned-out shell of a pickup, hurling grenades blindly toward the cliffs. The blast tore up dirt and stone but never reached the hidden SEAL positions. In the command center, a new red marker flashed on the screen. Gallo, the cartel lieutenant, had been identified inside an armored Ford Raptor near the convoy's front. The order came swift: secure him alive. On the ridge, 4 SEALs shifted into a new position. Crawling forward, they began their descent into the kill zone. They moved like shadows, every step deliberate, every rifle steady. Covering fire from above cleared their path while the Ghostrider, high above, adjusted, shifting to suppression fire, precise bursts that pinned down any gunman still resisting. The air reeked of burning rubber, diesel, and cordite. Sparks crackled from destroyed engines. Amid the haze, cartel fighters stumbled, coughing, their weapons trembling. One attempted to reload a machine gun, but a SEAL round shattered the weapon before he could chamber a round. Another tried to run toward the canyon's mouth, only to slam into a barrier of spikes, remotely activated by U.S. engineers. Then came a sharp cry over SEAL comms. One operator hit by glass fragments from a near explosion. Blood seeped through his shoulder armor. Without hesitation, his teammate dragged him into a shallow rock alcove. Administering first aid as a medevac call was relayed. Within minutes, the distinct thump of an HH-60W combat rescue helicopter echoed in the distance, racing low across the desert to extract the wounded. Even in the midst of chaos, no one was left behind. Meanwhile, the assault team pushed deeper into the canyon floor. Their rifles swept across shadows, flashlights cutting through smoke. Orders were short, sharp, and precise. Every movement was synchronized with air support. And just 100 meters ahead, inside his armored Raptor, Gallo gripped a radio that now spat only static. His empire's power had vanished, his convoy was burning, and the walls of the canyon were closing in. The canyon burned like a furnace. Wrecked vehicles smoldered, ammunition popped from ignited crates, tracer fire streaked in every direction. But the chaos no longer belonged to the cartel. It was controlled fire, every burst calculated, every strike directed. The box had closed. Through the smoke, the SEAL assault team advanced in staggered formation. Their boots crunched against shattered glass and twisted metal, rifle steady, scanning every shadow. Behind them, the Ghostrider pulsed bursts of suppression, its cannon silent between precision strikes. Above, the Reaper drone hovered, its sensors locked onto a single glowing heat signature inside the armored Ford Raptor at the convoy's front. Gallo, once a feared lieutenant, his voice had commanded plazas from Sonora to Nogales. Now it cracked in panic as he screamed into a useless radio, getting only static. His last hope, cartel reinforcements, had been cut off. Every frequency jammed, every escape sealed. He slammed a fist against the dashboard, eyes darting at the flames outside. The first SEAL reached the Raptor's flank. With swift precision, he fired a controlled burst into the windshield. Shards exploded inward. The driver slumped forward, dead before his head hit the steering wheel. Smoke poured into the cabin. Another SEAL swung around to the passenger side, a flashbang grenade primed. The detonation filled the truck with light and sound, stunning everyone inside. Before Gallo could raise his pistol, the door was ripped open. Strong arms dragged him into the dirt. His wrists were twisted behind his back, locked in steel cuffs. His encrypted laptop and 2 satellite phones were snatched from the seat beside him, sealed instantly into protective cases. For the first time in the battle, there was silence in Gallo's world. His empire, his power, his men, all burning in the canyon. He was nothing more than a prisoner in the dirt, guarded by the same men his cartel swore would never dare confront them on U.S. soil. Over encrypted comms, the words came steady and cold. High-value target secured. By 1:41 a.m., just 27 minutes after the first Claymore detonated, the canyon was silent except for the crackle of flames. The roar of engines was gone. The shouts of cartel fighters had been silenced. Only the steady hum of radios and the crunch of boots signaled that U.S. forces were in control. Portable floodlights lit the battlefield, beams cutting through the haze of smoke. Twisted husks of armored pickups smoldered, their steel frames warped and blackened. Heavy-duty trucks lay torn open, cargo spilling across the dirt. Bundles of methamphetamine and compressed fentanyl stacked in neat plastic-wrapped bricks. Crates of ammunition blackened by fire. Duffel bags stuffed with cash, charred but intact. DEA agents now moving in with the SEALs began cataloging everything. Each brick of drugs tagged, each weapon seized, each stack of bills photographed, logged, and sealed for transport. The haul was staggering. 2.4 tons of methamphetamine, 500 kilograms of fentanyl, more than $50 million in cash, and dozens of heavy weapons, all intended for trade across the border. The body count was just as cold. 47 cartel gunmen dead, scattered across the canyon floor. 19 more captured alive, their wrists bound with zip ties, their faces pale and broken, no longer soldiers of an empire, but prisoners awaiting interrogation. And above it all, one name echoed: El Gallo. The man once considered untouchable was now cuffed, silent, and under armed guard, awaiting transport to a secure facility. His encrypted laptop and phones were already on their way to federal labs, carrying secrets that could unravel supply chains and expose cartel partners across borders. The SEALs, though bloodied and bruised, had suffered only one wounded, already evacuated, stabilized, and safe. The mission had achieved what the Pentagon demanded: capture or eliminate everything, let nothing cross the border. The canyon that once carried the confidence of the Sinaloa Cartel now lay as a tomb, marked not by victory chants, but by the smell of burning steel and gunpowder. At dawn, the first rays of sunlight spilled across the Arizona desert, painting the canyon walls gold. Smoke still rose from the wreckage, drifting into the sky like a dark flag of warning. The silence was broken only by the low voices of SEALs securing the perimeter and DEA teams loading seized cargo into armored transports. By mid-morning, the images began to spread. Photographs of charred vehicles, burned-out gun mounts, and stacks of seized narcotics flooded newsrooms. Broadcasts in the United States and Mexico lit up with headlines: Cartel convoy destroyed in Arizona, SEAL Team 6 ambushes Sinaloa force. The footage played on repeat, tracer fire streaking across the desert, explosions echoing in the night, flames illuminating the canyon like a second sunrise. For Americans, it was more than a military victory. It was a reassurance that the men and women sworn to protect the nation's borders were not only watching, but capable of striking with overwhelming precision. Commentators called it a crippling blow to the Sinaloa network. Pentagon officials praised the flawless coordination between the Navy SEALs, Air Force crews, and DEA agents. But across the border, the shockwaves ran deeper. For years, the Sinaloa Cartel thrived on a myth of invincibility, claiming no American force would ever dare challenge them so close to the line. That myth was shattered in less than half an hour. Their trucks lay in ruins, their men were dead or bound, their lieutenant in chains, and their treasure, drugs, cash, and weapons now belonged to the United States. But the message was not only for them, it was for every cartel, every smuggler, every network that believed the border was a weakness to exploit. The lesson was simple, unspoken, but unmistakable. America is watching, America is waiting, and if you cross the line, you will face its full might. For the SEALs, there was no celebration, no victory chants, only the quiet handshake of warriors who knew they had done their duty and the weight of another mission completed. Because for them, this was not about headlines. It was about a promise to defend their nation, no matter the cost. As the last fires dimmed in the canyon, U.S. forces withdrew with ruthless efficiency. Trucks loaded with seized drugs and cash rolled back toward secure facilities. Prisoners, including El Gallo, were shackled and flown under heavy guard to black sites for interrogation. The battlefield was left behind, a scar on the desert floor, marked with burned steel and silence. By afternoon, Pentagon officials declared the operation a decisive success. A crippling blow to the Sinaloa supply chain, one statement read. Across America, news anchors spoke with awe about the ambush, about how an entire convoy was erased in less than 30 minutes. For once, the headlines favored the defenders of the border. But in Culiacan, Sinaloa's stronghold, word spread like wildfire. Families gathered in hushed tones, cartel soldiers swore vengeance, and whispers rose through the streets. Videos began to circulate, masked men with rifles promising retaliation, their voices trembling with rage. This wasn't over. To them, the loss of drugs and cash was a wound, but the capture of El Gallo was an insult carved deep into the cartel's pride. Intelligence reports confirmed it within hours. Movements in safe houses, encrypted chatter about reinforcements, shipments rerouted. The Americans had won the canyon, but they had also lit a fire that would spread beyond deserts and borders. For the SEALs, there was no illusion. Victories like this are never the end. They are warnings of storms yet to come. As one operator scribbled in his after-action notes, "Tonight we broke their convoy. Tomorrow, they'll come with an army." And as night fell once more across Arizona, the MQ-9 Reaper resumed its silent orbit, scanning the horizon. Because the war wasn't finished. The Navy would return. The question wasn't if, it was when and where.